how did I get here? Is this my design or is there a higher design going on here?
I think that so many people are acting from that generational trauma.
I think evolving internally, that's a decision that we get to do every day.
A feeling of pain or something you want to let go of, that it isn't going to take years and years of therapy, that you can just let it go.
Most people who are abusing some kind of substance is to free themselves in some way. Freedom without balance or stability is destruction.
We can have an identity that's going to create who we want to be.
Evolution is a decision.
Finding ways to be better versions of ourselves.
Spirituality and capitalism belong together. Those thoughts, those feelings, that comes from something bigger than I am. And together I believe we can all grow. That's how we're going to change the world. That's how we're going to change the planet.
I've got Michael Mahoney on the show today, and he is an NLP expert. He is a real estate expert. I mean, you could put expert in a lot of different things in your life that way. And I think that it's really amazing to be able to have you on the show because you and I have known each other now for what, about a year or so?
Yeah, a little over a year now.
About a year. And I've watched so many things in you as a human being just change. I mean, you went from basically doing a bunch of stuff, what I could see at the point in time with real estate, and you had been studying a long time with NLP, correct?
Yes, sir.
So tell me a little bit about NLP, because I don't know if everybody at home knows even what that is.
Oh, man, it's a good question. It's got a good history to it, so I'll try to be as concise as I can with it. NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming. It's been around since probably the 70s is when it got co-created. I found out about it, I think, 2008 is when I first saw Tony Robbins talk about it. And he was talking about how, him and Jim Rohn had used it to help them successfully in their business and other people's lives. So I was like, hey, Tony Robbins is successful. Jim Rohn is a successful guy. Let me see if I can learn a little more about this. Like most things that I had done up to that point, I wasn't truly all in on it. It was just kind of grazing through it. It wasn't until around 2018 when I met William Lamb, and he spoke at a real estate conference that I was at. And he spoke about the mind in a certain way that I never really heard about it before. He was saying how, the unconscious mind is this feminine energy and the masculine energy is the conscious mind. And at that time, I was like, what the heck is this guy talking about, right? But he also said you could reprogram it. And I was like, wait a minute, is he talking about NLP? And he said you could seduce the unconscious mind like the feminine energy, but also reprogram it. And I was like, all right, is he saying I can seduce it like a woman, but at the same time reprogram it? This sounds interesting to me. So that was my path leading to NLP and jumping into one of his trainings. From there, I just kind of geeked out on it, man. I realized that it could help me remove so many limiting beliefs that I had, negative emotions. And as I did that, things in my life naturally got better. So I was like, well, let me see if I could help my sisters. Let me see if I could help some friends and some other colleagues with this as well. Because I noticed that the more I reprogrammed my environment, my friends and family, they naturally got better results, made more money. So I was like, this is cool. Let's continue.
So question for you then. So when you found NLP, right? So you find this from Tony Robbins. You're going through all this information. You find William Lamb at a real estate conference.
Yeah.
And you realize that you can seduce the subconscious. What led you up to the point in time where you're like, listen, whatever's going on internally, whether it's the self-talk or whatever it is, what led you up to that point in time to want to change that? Because something has to happen internally for us to go like, I'm going to spend all my time, all my energy, all my money to learn something, to shift something. What was it?
I mean, I would say that there's a combination of things, right? There was never like one thing. It's always a compounding interest of things, right? 2008, when I first came across NLP, it was more of a curiosity. I was stepping into the real estate world for the first time, and I was like wanting to figure out how people were just successful in general. 2018, almost 10 years later, combination of breakups, failed business, bad real estate deals. So a combination of things that happened up to that point. And it was the first time in my life at that age, 2018, I was 5 years ago, I was 31, that I was like, I'm started to shift and really take more responsibility internally that I'm creating a lot of the negative things that were going on. So I'd say that was the cause of me wanting to invest so much with William in the training, that I realized that if I'm 100% responsible for everything that's going on right now, the good and the bad, then if this guy is saying, hey, you have the ability to reprogram it if you become a master of the subconscious, and I was like, hey, let's figure that out.
How did that change you? Like, how did it change you from going from the fact of, I'm going to learn NLP, I'm going to go through these things, I'm going to shift my subconscious mind, and then at the same time, I'm going to shift it so much that I'm actually going to go all in. I'm going to become, William Lamb's business partner. I'm going to create Sales God. I'm going to create this program called Upgrade. Like, why did that happen? Like, why was it so much burning inside of you that you decided that that was the direction you wanted to go? Because before that, you're doing real estate, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, you've had successes, you've had failures like all of us. But what led to that point in time to where you're like, you know what, this is going to be something, it's going to be an impact, something I'm going to put all my life force into, because you didn't just kind of do this. You drank the Kool-Aid.
Yeah, you're right. I did drink the Kool-Aid, and now help others drink the Kool-Aid too, if you will. So it came down to motivation. My motivation was not very big back in the day, and I thought it was big. I was the guy growing up in the Boston area who pushed the limits. I was the guy who was known as the friend who pushed the boundaries. And then I met William, and I was like, holy crap, man, this guy truly thinks big, right? And
I would agree. Yeah, William definitely thinks on a whole other level.
Exactly.
Yeah, if you think you have a comfort zone, he will show you exactly where your comfort zone is and how to push it even further. So you were the guy that thought you were pushing the limits, and then you meet William, and all of a sudden you realize that that's not exactly what you had been doing. So what changed though? Like when you say that you were pushing the comfort zone, you're like, yep, I've got this, but all of a sudden there's more to it. Give me an example.
First example I can think about is that when I was pushing that, more I believe was my big motivation, my boundaries, I was doing that of an away from motivation with pain. And most of it for me was anger and guilt. So when I learned, and this was the very first time I'd ever been asked this question, so I was doing the best I could with the resources I had available to me. William's like, well, what if you could, do X, Y, and Z in your real estate, have an amazing relationship, do all these amazing things, but you did it with abundance and love, and you didn't need the anger and the guilt. Would you choose that instead? And I was like, that's a pretty easy choice. Yeah, I would do that. He's like, well, then would you like to remove this? And I no one ever asked me that before, right? So giving that choice, I was like, yeah, let's remove this, obviously. So after I removed it for myself and I realized that, yeah, some of it was mine, but a lot of it was deep ancestral programming that was passed down to me. That motivation was like, well, if I could remove that for myself, and if I now have these massive goals that I see and I can do it, not out of fear, right? Not out of anger, out of a place of true abundance of love, could I help others do the same thing? And it went from a place of believing to knowing the more I did this training, because every training I watched someone else break through. And it's like you watch the sun rise over and over again. You just know it's going to happen again. So from that point, I kept going on, and I was like, well, I know I can do this for others. Let me see how far I can push this with Upgrade to help out more.
I love that you say that. It actually reminds me of a story when you talk about generational trauma, right? You talk about generational pain. Recently, I lost my aunt. And so I was at the funeral recently, and I had this moment when I was thinking like, okay, they asked me to speak, to get up there and do her eulogy. And before I got up there and did that, I was in meditation, and I heard her say to me, I mean, the only way to explain it, but just through kind of that whisper in life, and that is that tell our family that they need to let go of all of that trauma. Wow. Tell them they need to let go of these things. And so I heard this really loud, and I thought, oh, wait, this isn't what you do with a eulogy. So I got up there and I said, hey, listen, you know what I mean? Let that shit go. That was my words. And after that, I then talked to my family, because a lot of times, I think in family with generational traumas, we hide it. We don't want to talk about it. My family, it was always at that point in time, unfortunately, it was you don't air your dirty laundry, which means you don't talk about anything going on inside. You just kind of push it down. You don't have to worry about those things. But publicly, in front of my whole family during that funeral, I told everybody, I said, listen, our family, your uncles, your aunts, your dad, they came from a family where their parents were alcoholics, and they didn't have a really good upbringing. Like, they actually had a pretty bad upbringing, if not worse than most people I know. But in doing that, my father was afraid, I could tell from me saying those things. But when I got done, he gave me a hug, and he said, thank you. Because we were finally able to really say what's going on, right? And so I think that so many people are acting from that generational traumas, right? So I'm seeing it constantly that that's happening in most people's lives, but they don't even realize that that's what's running the boat. They don't realize like what's pushing that steam all the time is, in fact, all of that generational trauma that's going on. And I realized for myself recently, and I know we've talked about psychedelics a little bit, but I'll be going to Costa Rica here at the end of the month. Well, I should say the end of December. And the work I'm going to be doing there is the generational trauma work for my family, because my family right now, they're going through dementia because they don't want to remember their youth. And so being able to use tools like what you have, the tools that you and William have been able to create to be able to not maybe have to go. So some people, they don't want to do psychedelics. You know what I mean? They don't want to do any of those things, and that's fine. But they can use the tools like you have. They can use NLP. They can use hypnosis. They can use, basically these different techniques in order to be able to change and shift their mind. And I know how powerful those are because I use them all the time. And so there's a lot of people who are doing NLP out there. A lot of people they do hypnosis. People have seen hypnosis on stages and so forth. And this is a long process. What I like about what you guys do is you don't make it complicated. You don't make it woo-woo. You make it very simple, very easy for anybody to do. And one of my favorite things you guys do, which actually changed my life completely, is coming up with 100 goals. Can you talk about that? Can you talk about why that's important and like why somebody at home, when they're listening to this, why they would want to think of 100 goals, 100 wants, 100 desires? Like what's that all about? Because for me, it was impactful, and I'll share my story in a second.
First of all, I want to say I loved what you said earlier about the eulogy and that imprint stage that we talk about in Upgrade. And actually, William James, the father of American psychology, 0 through 8 imprint stage. So those learned behaviors that you were talking about with the family, it's like, hey, we're doing the best we can, right, with the resources we had available to us. So if people feel like they're struggling now with any behaviors that you don't like, give yourself some self-acceptance and some grace, because you just learn these things, but they can be unlearned too. That's part of the design process. When we have a client do 100 material items and 100 experiences and design it over a 90-year timeline, we're asking them to push the boundaries of the things that they may believe that they truly want, but don't believe that they may deserve yet. So it begins to push out any of the limiting beliefs, limiting decisions that we as the programmers can help them find those codes and reprogram them for them. Now, that was a very technical terms. Basically, I want to help someone break through some emotions, man. If someone's got some negative emotions that are holding them back from being the best, most 100%, highest version of themselves they could be, I want to help them design it first, get massive clarity for themselves, and then we help them remove negative emotions and help install. I would say that, and I'm going to say this, kind of blatantly now, Upgrade is what NLP could have become if it had stayed on the path of, let me just put it this way, if it had stayed focused of truly pushing the boundaries of someone's inner workings. That's what I believe Upgrade's at now. We show someone how to design, test, operate, and go deep within the subconscious mind so you can find the highest version of yourself faster.
Absolutely. Well, and what I love about you too is I consider you to be a firewalker. I consider myself to be the same. And when I say that, it means that we're willing to walk the fire. A lot of people don't want to do these things, are afraid of them. They're like, I don't know about that stuff. But when someone's willing to walk the fire and show them it's safe, then all of a sudden like, I'm going to go do that. And you walked the fire not too long ago. I mean, when I was talking to you, not just about NLP, but you're like, okay, what more am I capable of? What more can I push my mind to, right? And you decided to basically lock yourself in a room. I don't know who would do this except you, but lock yourself in a room, turn off the lights, and starve yourself or something. No, but really though, like tell me a little bit about that and the people at home.
Yeah, I did. We'll give some context to that so people don't think I'm a weirdo.
No. It's okay if they do though.
For sure.
That's change makers out there.
Hey man, people being weirder but pushing the boundaries. So, darkroom meditation, right? And I would say that before we dive into this, I did have the training that I learned in Upgrade first, and I'm very glad, very, very glad that I had that mental programming training before I did the darkroom.
Why is that?
Because darkroom is a simulation of death. So a lot of things come up when you've lost the visual, which is one of our main sensory acuities, the visual. So when you're in the darkness, I believe anywhere from like 18 to 20 hours, your mind starts to just come up with some things, right? And it's different for everyone.
What did it come up with you?
For me, it started with the ancestral anger that I had on my father's side. And then it switched to the not forgiving and the grudges that was held on my mother's side. And it was such this mirrors that I could see, like ancestors on the Mahoney side who had this anger, a little bit of alcoholism. And then on the Purcell side, my mother's side, it was not forgiving people for doing what they had wronged us to do, holding grudges. And I could see me and my sisters, this combination of these things. And I was like, man, that's not a combination that I really want to continue to carry out into the world. So the dark room helped me sit with that. And I did it for 60 hours. And there's not much going on in there, man. Like I did fast during it too, so I just had water with me. I felt like eating food would distract me in a way, and I didn't want to be distracted. So that process was honestly one of the most moving processes I've ever done in my life. Since then, I feel like time has slowed down a little bit for me, and I can slow things down because of that exercise that I did.
Yeah, you've and since then you've also done some pretty amazing things. And when I say the pretty amazing things, I mean you went to Jerusalem, is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And you went there. What was the purpose? I know it had a lot to do with. I remember listening to you and William talk about this, but had a lot to do with peace. Had a lot to do with like changing the world, and that's what one of the things I love about really spiritual capitalism. And when I say that is that you guys obviously you understand what it takes to make money. And you understand what it also takes to be in alignment, right, with that money, like tying those two things together so that you can do some of these missions, right? So tell me about that mission and tell me how it changed your life.
Yeah, alignment's got to be, in my opinion, right? It should be connected to the capitalism. It should be connected to making money. That's just my definition. If I'm going to make money with you or with anyone else, we're going to be in alignment with our values, which is probably why we got invited to go to Jerusalem, because biggest agency was hired to do the media for the person who invited us over there. His name is Rabbi Kurt Landry. So he's been serving Jerusalem, the people of Israel, for I think almost like 30, 35 years or something like that. Been over there a lot of times. We were very fortunate to be invited, I think, on his 46 or 47 trip over there. So there was two things. We were going to film him and produce his media, biggest agency was. And then also he believes that Upgrade can help with some of the miscommunication that's going on over there, because there's a deep history over there. And I'm not going to say that I'm an expert professional of what's going on over there. I do understand miscommunication though. And that's what Upgrade is very good at. We understand communication at a deep level. That's not just surface structure. There's root structures in there. So we were invited, as you said, to go over there to see if we can help with communication to bring peace to that country. William has a pretty good analogy. If there's a fire in the kitchen and you're sitting in the living room, you're not going to do nothing about it. You're going to get up and you're going to see if you can put out the fire.
Of course you are.
That's how we feel about Israel. Those are our brothers and sisters. We're all one race, all of us human beings together. So if we have some skill sets, if we have some technology that can help them, then we want to help them.
And when you say that you want to help them, right, which is great. We all want to help the wells and, we all want to help the homeless. We all want to do things. Not just the wanting, like what are you doing that is creating that peace over there as far as with Upgrade?
So we haven't engaged with anything professionally or an agreement with them yet. So right now it's just still in talks. What we will and believe that we can do for them is give them some of the skills that you've learned in Upgrade, that their clients have learned in Upgrade, about how sometimes we play on the stage of our mind a preview of coming attractions. So if someone is carrying around a 1,000-year, right, because it's not just theirs, it's been passed down from generations, 1,000-year, story, movie that is one of wrongdoing, one of us versus them, then that's going to continue on. And there's not going to be a solution, a peaceful solution for it if they continue on with that. So we believe that our methodologies can help them remove that and help them design a future better process for them. We haven't tested it out yet, man, but hey, we've had great results here with our clients here. And that was something that we as, a company, we want to be able to prove that to ourselves too. Can we go over there and in one of the most, there's a lot of conflict going in that area. I think we know that, right? There
really is a lot of conflict. Yeah.
So if we can help them over there, that shows that our methodologies, it proves, not just like has a belief, it proves that we can do this for a larger scale of people.
Yeah, and I've seen you do those things within smaller groups of people, right? So when I think about Israel as a whole, and that's a whole other conversation. But just to be able to change and create peace there. And what I love about it though, more than anything, is at least that there's the vision there. You know, it's part of those 90-year goals, those 100-year goals, those 1,000-year goals. And what I find about when we were talking about before about these goals is that it starts to condense down. Like what you thought you could do in, you know, in a year, all of a sudden you realize that you can do way more in that year, or vice versa with 10 years. And so it starts to kind of condense that time down. And going back a little bit in that conversation of the 100-year goals, my experience with that was really impactful. And it was impactful because I was writing down things that I wanted to see in the world. And I remember writing it down and bringing in the visuals and the auditory and the kinesthetic and the gustatory and so on, like all these different senses that we navigate the world through. But I was navigating these future experiences in my mind and almost as if I was there. And so much that I was navigating in my mind, I was teary-eyed as if it had already happened. And so it brought a lot of data, it brought a lot of information in where I was like, oh, wait a minute. I've done this. I've been there. And so if I can go there, then I can start to then look backwards and be like, okay, if I've been here, then how did I get here? And what happened? And who did I align with? And what pieces did I bring into place? And so I could see that same component happening if, let's say, 10,000, a million people did that same exercise and they were focused on peace and they were focused on healing and they were focused on that ancestral healing, how that would just change things completely. And it's no different than I think than what we're doing in a different way. And that is tying in spirituality with capitalism, right? Those two don't seem like they really belong. And sometimes it doesn't feel like for some people that even peace belongs, right? Because they don't even have peace in their own home. So why are they going to have peace in like another country? But what I find though, is that if we can stop making enemies of things and start creating healing and then start to find out like, this just makes sense. Like this is actually what I really want. And I can let go of all that pain, that suffering, that trauma and step into that space. Then there's no reason that we can't create heaven on earth. We can't create peace on earth. We can't create abundance in our lifestyles and in our lives and in our families and really create that massive change, which to me, that's what it seems like you and William are doing. Like you're really committed to that. And you're not just taking some random people off the street. You're taking like big leaders. You're taking people who are running businesses. You're taking people that like have big vision. And what I love about what you guys are doing as well is that it's a safe place to have a big vision. The world is not a safe place to have a big vision because it's much easier to have this story of I almost did this or I almost did that. And you start telling people, hey, my goal is to be a billionaire to impact the world. Other rooms, they laugh at you and be like, you know, good job, crazy man. But in that community, it's celebrated. And that community, it's like, okay, well, if you want to do that, then why not become a trillionaire? You know, it's a whole different way of thinking. And recently we had Aaron on the show, and he was talking about just different ways that we can, Aaron Bear, that we can think differently, right? And it's all about thinking differently and changing that mindset and changing that paradigm of this world. And so with that, like, where are you guys going? What are you doing next? If you're going to be pushing the boundaries, like, where are you pushing them to?
I mean, you always start with yourself first, right? So we always have to look internally and see where we can push ourselves more. And externally, we want to help, as you said, people who are in positions to make the fastest impact, right? So when we speak with someone like yourself or your business partner, Ryan, or other people who have successful businesses, we're like, all right, these are men and women who are already in positions of influence, authority. They've already created successful businesses. It's going to be very easy. They're going to be open to wanting to change faster, right? They're going to be open to wanting to, if they get these skill sets, if they get the mindset programming down for themselves, wanting to spread it out and help other people quicker. So we're always looking to work with good people. Just be honest. I want to work with good people who do have an abundance mindset and want to serve, right? For me, that comes a big down for the identity of who I am. When I think about my values, serving is very high up there. And the best way I know how to serve right now, where the time I am at in my life, is through the mental programming skills that we have at Upgrade. And then just being a good friend to other people too.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that is the key in life, right? Like, is treating people with respect and honor and, values and having those things doesn't mean you're going to always perfectly do it,
Yeah.
but just doing your best. So I understand that when you were in Jerusalem, that you may have had some interesting experiences for yourself personally, like your inner heart, like some things that way. So before you went to Jerusalem, from my understanding, maybe I'm wrong here, but that you didn't have a whole lot of, I don't know if belief is the right word, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth because I don't think that's fair, but of something higher, like maybe people call it God, they call it, I mean, there's many different conversations for this, but would you say when you went to Jerusalem, you had a spiritual experience or something that might have just changed some of the trajectory of your life?
For sure. And I appreciate that bringing up. So growing up in the New England area, I was born in 87. Let's give some context there. I'm 36. My parents were young, and in the Boston area, there had some things that had happened within the Catholic churches in the Boston area that just, people can look it up. Just wasn't good, right?
Right.
My parents, being young and wanting to protect me, they immediately began to shun the Catholic Church around that area and then moved me out. And again, I'm like 4 years old at that time, so imprint stage of my life. So unconsciously, I had a negative charge towards the church and religion and spirituality just overall. And that filtered into other areas of my life as I grew up. People who were, believers in God, who talked about church, who talked about religion, I either, distorted the message or thought it was like woo-woo or whatever it was, right? So I just wasn't a big believer.
Before we jump into that, did you ever though, during that period of time,
Yeah.
did you ever have like an internal voice, an internal thought, like something that felt like it wasn't coming from you, but it was something higher that was leading you on a path? I mean, because this just recently happened, but some would say that you've been following breadcrumbs for quite some time.
I think so. I do believe. I remember a few times that, especially during challenging times, like I tore my ACL playing high school football, and I remember sitting in the shower with my knee just blown up, and a voice just kind of coming in my head and being like, "You're gonna get through this." And I didn't know if it was my own voice or God's voice. Who knows?
But what was it? What did you feel?
I just felt a feeling of calmness, like because I was in such pain then, right? I'm only 15 years old, and I was such pain from tearing my ACL, first major injury for me, and I was acting nervous and frantic, like fearful for my safety and health. So the feeling of calmness came through, like you're gonna get through this. And so to your point, there have been moments, even with me not being religious and going to church, that I still felt connected to a higher power, if you will.
And so you're in Jerusalem. What happens in Jerusalem that all of a sudden that you start to, some of the systems that you had been kind of ingrained into in your subconscious mind, right? As you just called it, some of these stories that were there of, about religion, about spirituality. Like what happens in Jerusalem though that changes these stories for you?
So on the way to Jerusalem, it's a long flight, right? And I had some time to reflect. And it was starting to hit me. I'm like, hey, for a guy who doesn't believe in God, AKA, or doesn't say that I'm a big believer, right? And I'd started to actually get on the path of believing in God. Some things that have been removed through the training with Upgrade, spirituality had filtered into my life much heavier. And just understanding the mind, the neuroplasticity of the mind, how crazy and cool our minds are, I was like, man, there's got to be some kind of higher source to this, right? So it already started. But on the flight over, I'm like, all right, if I'm not a believer in God, but I'm on my way to Jerusalem with a guy who's the rabbi, Kurt Landry, and he has this huge influence over there, how is it that I'm connected to this somehow?
That's so beautiful, though. It's so beautiful you're actually in the questioning of things, right? Most people just move on life and they don't even think about like that. I mean, the miracle that is that you're sitting there with the rabbi going to Jerusalem and you don't even believe any of these things. And somehow or another, you're still walking this path with him and he still trusts you enough because of your values and because of who you are and because of what you stand for. Some would say that you're already walking in that path anyways, right? We get it very confused that spirituality comes from books or it comes from some place or it comes from, something that somebody has called it. But really, I mean, if you're walking your own path with integrity, you're walking a path that it's something greater than yourself, some might say that you're already walking on that path. If you weren't, I'm pretty sure a guy like that would tell you, like, I don't think maybe you should be coming with me. Like, you're not doing the same song I'm doing, and we're not singing from the same songbook. So
Yeah.
so continue. It just made me realize that you had to have been in that place.
Yeah, learning what I learned with Upgrade and with William. And to be fair, like we were invited as a group. It wasn't just me, going along. William, Brady, myself, we were all invited as a group. So I think he saw the value of all of us going over there together. But I was questioning it. And I was like, how did I get here, right? Is this my design or is there a higher design going on here? So I'm having those questioning. And then we get in Jerusalem and the feeling there, man, is just like, it's different, right? There's a spiritual feeling there. It's Jerusalem. It's the epicenter of all of religions, if you will.
Right.
And so we're in the King David Hotel the very first day, and Brady and I are looking at the West Wall. And I'm standing in the King David Hotel looking at the West Wall and just seeing the land and how beautiful it is, and knowing that there's, different opinions and values of people all around there, between the Jewish people and the Palestinian people and all these different religions. And then we see like the LDS community, we see the Catholic too. I was like, wow, there's something going on here, right? I'm getting this curiosity feeling. And for me personally, there was just such a moving that I think there is a higher power, and I think I am connected to something. And while I don't know exactly what my purpose here is now, I'm going to stay to what I know to be true, is that I have some skill sets. I'm with a company that we believe we have some technology and some methodologies to help people evolve faster, because that's really, in my opinion, right? The conflict is about value systems between people who need to evolve, who need to understand that this me versus you, for me to win, you got to lose type attitude, mentality is archaic. And it's not helping them evolve. It's not going to help their brothers and sisters evolve. It's not going to help their children evolve. So if we can help, which we know we've done here domestically in America and other countries as well, our clients get to that point, that's where that spirituality, that moment for me happened there. And I was like, did I place myself here or did God place myself here?
It's an interesting place that is such an interesting place to be, right? And that is, am I creating this? So I've had this conversation recently, and that is, if I'm responsible for all of my reality, I'm creating the good and the bad, right? Then, and everything is energy and everything is light and it's all working in this cohesive manner, then one might say it's both. It's not one or the other.
Yeah.
Because if we're coming from some source of energy, and let's say that we could program that energy and we're co-creating, but we're still creating, we're still choosing our paths, then it would be both. And I think so often we want to say it's one or the other. It's this or that. Back to you're either spiritual or you're a capitalist, or it's either or, but it's probably more likely both. It's not one or the other. You know what I mean? And I think that you saying like, hey, like I don't exactly know what this is, but I know that there's something there. I think that's one of the most honest things somebody can say, because when people come out and they say, this is it, it's only this thing, well, then it doesn't leave any room for any growth. And I know my entire life, I think I know something. Like I think like, okay, this is it. This is exactly what it is. And if I die on that cross and I say, this is the thing, now all of a sudden I find out a year later down the road that I was completely wrong. But in that being wrong or that learning, what I find is there's a ton of growth through that. I mean, think about all the people that come through Upgrade. How many people think one thing, and all of a sudden I watch them walk out and they're like, what just happened? Like they're just confused. I know I was one of them. You know what I mean? So I've learned those things. So I find it fascinating though that you go to Jerusalem though and you pull this energy from that area, and you see the Catholics and you see the Jews and you see the Mormons and you see all these different people. But one of the things you said before that is that it's either that there's this place of like contention. There's this place of almost like hate in a way, right?
Yeah, you can feel that energy too.
I don't bring it up for that reason. I'm saying that the people that's what's going on there. And I wouldn't say it's just in Jerusalem. I would say it's the entire planet.
Oh, absolutely.
And that's what's beautiful about the work you're doing, the work that I'm doing, the work that a lot of a lot of people are doing in this planet is to wake up the planet, like wake people up to realize that it's not this or that. It's everything, and that abundance is our birthright, and that we can have all of it, not just some of it. We can have all of it, and we can experience anything we want to experience. But it's that co-creation, though. And I think that's what Upgrade does. It gives you the ability to co-create with something that's unseen. And the unseen could be the subconscious. It could be what's internally in the heart. It could be a lot of different things, but one would say that it's magic. One would say that it's something that it's like you get these tools, you get in your tool belt, that if you choose to, you can take it out. I watched William, and when William was on a stage recently at Lions Not Sheep, right? We're talking about a group of people that they believe in their message. It's a strong message, right? It's a very strong masculine like feeling. You know, it's like it's kind of like that warrior, like them against us type feeling in a way. But then I watched William get up there and show those people very quickly that it didn't have to be that way, and that like if you have that feeling inside of yourself, like if you have a feeling of pain or something you want to let go of, that it isn't going to take years and years of therapy, that you can just let it go. But for people, that becomes something difficult to believe. Like, you're telling me I've been carrying this around for the last 10, 15, 20, 30 years, and I can just let it go? Why would I want to do that? Because there is a purpose for some people, as we talked about secondary gain, to hold on to these things. There's a purpose for it. So once they let that go, all of a sudden they're like, okay, now who am I without that story? Definitely. I know I've had to kill my story over and over and over. And if someone's like, hey, I don't believe in God, or I don't believe in a higher power, and all of a sudden I do, wait a minute. Well, what else am I not seeing? What else am I capable of that I'm not even aware of? Yeah. I think that's the beauty of life.
I think if someone is unfamiliar with that process, they might see it as a negative, where now that I've gone through our training, I see it as an opportunity, right? So when I was going through that identity shift of like, is God now a part of my life? I'm like, wow, how many more opportunities now do I have rather than the losses, right? The potential losses. I think what you were talking about earlier is so important that I just want to like double tap on it real quickly. Language describes and defines our reality. So when
say that again,
language describes and defines our reality. So the language that I'm using is describing what's going on internally for me, and it's defining my reality at the same time. So if I'm using negative language continuously, or if it's coming from a worry state, a lower energy field, then my world is going to be like that. And I want to operate with people who operate at a higher energy field, like you. When I met you, there was just this feeling of unconditional love from you. Like, you meet people with an identity of unconditional love. And I want to be around people like that. And if people don't know what they don't know, right, going back to they're doing the best with the resources they have available to them, we can help them remove the language that's holding them back in the lower energy field and go to a higher energy field. I think this is why some people abuse alcohol or drugs for some reason, because it allows them to move up the energy fields, the higher energy fields, for a little moment.
You think so?
I do.
I would disagree for myself. I drink a lot. Like I would drink basically Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You know, I would drink, and I did it well. I got a couple certificates for that one and some degrees. So why I drank was different. And I remember one time telling somebody, I said, why are you drinking so much? I mean, because it brings me down. It brings me lower so I can relate to people. Because my mind works in a different way and I see things in a different way. And so for me, I would say that is not the case for me.
Let me ask you, when you lower those, when you wanted to get lower, for what purpose did you relate? To relate. Yeah, because for me, I'm not really great at having conversations about the weather, about what's going on in Phoenix on a Tuesday. I don't care. Like, I just don't care. And so a lot of things that people would get excited about, sports or these types of things, I would want to have conversations about spirituality, or I'd want to have conversations about anything but the weather. And so I found that when I numb myself down a bit, I could relate to those people and have some really dumb conversations. Gotcha. Now, when you were able to relate to them, was that a freeing feeling for you?
Yeah, I would say so.
So that's what I mean by it. Most people who are abusing some kind of substance is to free themselves in some way.
Oh, okay. I thought we were saying bring yourself up, because I would say if we look at things like psychedelics or those things, that definitely brings your energy up
Yes.
to deal with some really heavy things sometimes, right? Or see some really beautiful things. But bringing those levels up in that way, I thought we were talking about an energetic, like higher level, because I look at, I look at cannabis, I look at alcohol. Typically it's something that brings me like down, and I don't do any of those anymore, but that's what I would do with those personally.
For sure. And I had the same experience or a similar experience when I drank alcohol. It would bring me down, but it was a freeing way.
It would be.
I would
I
be
would agree.
suppressing negative emotions, but then it would allow me to be freer and be more outgoing, right? Or be able to relate to someone. So I think people abuse the substance in that way. It's a freeing thing for them. But to realize freedom without balance or stability is destruction.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, one of my massive goals on this planet is to, and it's a big one, and that is to figure out a way to eradicate, addiction. And when I say addiction, I mean methamphetamines, I mean heroin, I mean opiates, I mean, those types of things, like eradicate those things on the planet, because I see how much it takes people's souls, including alcohol, including cannabis. Like, I'm not against them, but I just see that it numbs people out. It numbs people out from like real connection. And that connection to me is, excuse me on that. It's impactful. It's impactful to have those connections with people.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing that our planet right now, I see a lot of pain. You said something a moment ago about unconditional love. And if I look at it, I look at like somebody that was a mentor of mine, and that's Jesus, right? Jesus Christ. That doesn't mean, though, however, I'm like this big, massive believer in the Bible or religious on any level. It is, to me, it's the symbolism of what Jesus stood for, and to walk during that path and have that type of compassion. But also in doing that, what I found by having that kind of compassion and having that type of love for people, it can be a double-edged sword, because it can also lead to the fact of also being more playing the victim role, because, well, Christ was crucified, at least in the stories. And also it leads to wanting to save people. And that's an interesting line between the two.
That's a pretty solid awareness right there.
Yeah. And it's something I had to be aware of, I had to be really aware of that. I wasn't taking my identity and tying it to something else, because that identity is really powerful. We can have an identity that's going to create who we want to be, or an identity that is something that maybe we want other people to see us as, or that somebody else wants us to be. And so it's letting go of all of those belief systems, just being and just truly who we are. And it's always changing, though. Like, I think as we change our belief systems constantly, then the identity changes.
That's the beautiful thing about it, right? We're always in control of that. If we want to continue to evolve, evolution is a decision. Change is constant, it's given. I think evolving internally, that's a decision that we get to do every day.
Yeah, and we're modeling, right? We're always modeling, we're always shifting things, and finding ways to be better versions of ourselves. But then that would mean that then the version of yourself is not enough. But I don't see that, right? Like, we're always just progressing and moving and finding deeper ways to love and to be loved.
Yeah, a good visualization process that I'll give to the listeners and the viewers is, at least this worked for me. I've started to look at it as like portals, almost like batons that I'll pass on to the next relay version of myself. So similar to like a relay race, passing the baton to the new identity of Michael Mahoney. And every time I go through that portal and I pass the baton on, it's not that that prior identity isn't good anymore. It's just that I'm evolving to the new version. And heck yeah, let me go faster with this new version of me.
Oh, I love that you said that. And here's why. It's a good one. You're passing on a baton, right?
Yeah.
And in passing on a baton, there are some aspirations that you have that relate to California. You want to talk about that?
I do. Let's jump into it.
Just because I know you, right? I know where you're going.
Yeah, I gotcha. So in 10 to 12 years from now, I plan to run for the governor of California. I believe it's a beautiful and diverse state. And I believe it also used to kind of be like, the state that our country looked up to in a way, right? We looked at Hollywood and everything, the beauty out there. And we're like, man, California's just so awesome. Tech industries settled out there too. And I think, from my personal opinion, over the past 5-6 years, that state's just changed. Values have changed, and we've seen a lot of things, in my opinion, that I'm just not cool with it anymore. Right? Is it all right to talk about one of the subjects?
Yeah, go ahead.
I do not care how anyone identifies. I do care about safety of women, though. When men are allowed to identify as a woman and then go into a public woman's restroom, and we're seeing sexual abuse and rape charges happen because a man who is identified as a woman now has the right to go in there. Or there's been like 20 to 25 cases of California prisons where men identified as women, they get put into a women imprisonment, a prison, and then again, a sexual abuse thing happens. That to me is just BS. And if the current administration of California is not open to changing that, heck, I mean, dude, I would like to meet someone tomorrow, right? That's like, hey, we're going to change that, right? And I would mentor them. I would coach them. So then maybe I don't have to run for governor of California 10 to 12 years from now.
So got it.
But if things aren't going to change, then my timeline with children, with what I'm doing with Upgrade, how long I see us continue working here, then I'm going to run for governor of California. And I believe that Upgrade will have tools to help out the education system, to help out the value system, and change the ways over there. There's nothing that I want to say, like, California's still an amazing state, right? And there's still great people that live there and that work there. I think we can all agree, though, when we see things like that, it's like, that's just evil.
I think it's a difficult conversation you're having, right? Like, not a conversation I really want to get into politically, but I think it's a difficult conversation in the fact of we take numbers that sometimes that serve our purpose, and I'm not saying you're doing that, but I do see this a lot, and we take numbers that serve purpose because I know people that are transgender men, right? They do that, and they're not going in bathrooms, they're not raping women, right?
Yep.
They don't have any interest in that. They just don't want to go into a bathroom where they're around men dressed as a woman. Mm. And I've had conversations because for me, that particular subject has been something I've been like leaning into and trying to understand, like, where does it come from? Does it come from a place where these, I can just think of one of my friends in particular, right? That I grew up with my whole life. And all of a sudden he decides that he's a woman and he goes through this whole transition and he does all of these things. And he says, I always knew that. And so on one side, I'm like, I understand where you're coming from, right? I understand that people are using it as an excuse versus something they're actually feeling and going through. And we have to have compassion on both sides. And I don't have the answers for either one of those, truly. That's not what I'm going to try to figure out here today. But what I would say is that I do love the fact, though, that you are taking a stand for something you believe in. And that, to me, is what it takes, always. We have to take a stand in something we believe in. And so if that's what it's going to be for you, you know what I mean, in the state of California to do that, then, I think that you let the people decide that.
Indeed. I mean, I can only be the person that I'm going to be now and then in 10 years from now and let, the economy and the people of California decide. There's many other things that I'm running on besides that. And to your point, I got friends who also have changed genders. I got family members who've done it too. I want to have the most compassion I can for any decision that any human being does. I just want to keep people safe.
Of course.
And if there's decisions that we can do, get more chunk up and find agreements for it together as a society, and make it a better place for children, because that's really where the negative effects get passed down to. Someone who's 0 to, let's call it 14, 15, 16 years old, who isn't aware of these decisions, right? And may not have the foresight to look into it. That's where adults are supposed to look into the foresight, because we have the privilege of hindsight, insight, and we're supposed to foresight for our children.
Yeah, I could see what you're saying that way. And it will be interesting in 10, 15 years, because we're talking about our minds shifting and changing and our belief system shifting and changing and where the world's going to be in 10, 15 years, where that conversation will be relevant or not. You know what I mean? Or what your belief systems will change, or what will shift, or what levels of new compassion you have, or who knows, right? Yeah. Like it's so limited for us to think that what we stand on today will always stand on. And we just might not. We might look down 10, 15 years from this interview and be like, I learned a lot that day. We just don't know.
I hope so.
So speaking of, I know that, you will probably live on this planet forever, knowing all the things you do. But when you finally like leave, like, you know what I mean? Your body is no longer, or your soul is no longer here anymore, right? What do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, deep question. I love it. Um, I would say to my friends and family and my colleagues, I would like to be remembered as someone that always was there for them,
Hmm.
right? Whether we were in a fight, or like they felt like they could reach out to me in any way, right? And if it gets to the point where my political aspirations do come into play and it's in the public face, someone who served.
I love it. And what I love about that, and thank you for your answer. What I love about that is it wasn't that it's about changing the planet, the world, even though you're talking about world peace, you know, you're talking about Israel, you're talking about running for governor. You literally took things all the way back to the most simplistic thing, which is connection, which is family, which is friends, and to let the people that are the closest to you know how much you were there for them. And that to me, that means that the impact that you're making, you'll always make because it's in the forefront of your mind that that's what you want to be remembered for. And that's beautiful. So I really do appreciate you coming out though, man.
Appreciate you having me.
Is
It's
there
awesome.
is there anywhere that is there anything you want to let anybody else know at home? Like, is there anywhere that they can follow you if they want to find out more information? They want to vote for you one day for governor.
For sure. My Instagram handle is pretty easy. Michael F. Mahoney. I'm sure Vegas will put a little link in here or something like that. Upgrade.com, upgrd.com. Become curious about yourself, about the power of your own mind, and check us out.
Yeah. So I would say that if you're at home right now and you are running a company and you're looking for a place to like really get that extra level where you're trying to find a way to make a bigger impact with your community, with your culture, with your family, with your friends, or you have something internally inside that you know that you're made for more, then I would suggest that you go to Upgrade, check them out. Changed my life. There are a lot of really good people there, a lot of great opportunities to be able to network and find out things that you didn't even know where you were capable of, and then turn around and all of a sudden what you thought you were capable of 1 year, all of a sudden you'll realize you're a lot more capable of it. So look out for Michael Mahoney. And thank you so much again, Michael.
Appreciate it, brother.
All right, man.